Yes, hold on. Yes. What?
You're allowed to come in?
Yeah, I'm just turning the camera. Yeah. Yeah, Margaret's here.
Hello, everybody. Or not.
Hi, Jeremy.
Oh, hi, Maggie. I thought maybe I was in the wrong place. I was checking to make sure I was on the right Zoom call.
Hold on, say that again. Why is my volume way down, apparently?
Oh, I was checking to make sure I was on the right Zoom call.
Yup.
Hi, everybody.
Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Margaret. How are you?
Enough of that attitude, Steve.
The beatings will continue until the attitude changes.
That's right. Steve, have you had to do much work with Richard Stewart?
Well, I made it a practice pretty early on to try to keep him at a pretty good distance. I kind of saw what his approach was. But I've also known that he is a tremendous adversary. So I neither poke him or I don't provoke him or anything. I think I may have blocked him on Facebook even and just don't engage.
I think I have to establish that type of relationship with him after joining these boards. I think he's a little psycho on the disability thing. And I'm not exactly all about that.
Yeah, and he wanted South Vine and he wanted the variances to allow for businesses. And he has, a few people down there that he spoke to. They're mostly business owners. I don't believe there are any homeowners that are terribly supportive. I don't think I think his main office is off of Rose. And I think he may live back in Battle Creek now, but he's very adept at scrolling through. He's one to make sure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's because he catches people up. He caught up a fellow, another nonprofit that used to have a spaghetti dinner, like a fundraiser. And they would give a glass of wine with the spaghetti dinner, but they didn't apply for a liquor license. And these two became entangled. And he got them. It became a $10,000 fine, and it was legit. Wow. So, I don't try to provoke him. I don't engage with him really. I just, I try to keep front and center that he's a very vocal minority, like one person. There's him and I'm trying to think of who the auto dealer, Mr. Davis, I think the auto dealer. And, he's real big on talking about Southtown, this kind of Southtown Confederacy.
That's what I kept running into. And it's some part of the Vine neighborhood that he considers Southtown. And I didn't want to argue the fact too much, but I didn't want to bemoan him either. So
it's the part that doesn't support his initiatives. So,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I'd get a little 411 on that before I dove too deep into that pool.
Yeah, he was in the neighborhood for a long time, but I don't think he's here anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. This is the type of the time before the meeting when I like to gossip. So.
Right. I knew we weren't being recorded yet, so I was going to talk shit about Brendan. But now that he's done the call, right? I mean, that takes all the fun out of it.
Oh, Jeremy.
Oh, hi. Hi, Brendan. Hi, Brendan.
Oh, never mind. He's here. Oh, there he is. Him and all those awards.
Jeremy, I'm so glad you made it. Usually it's iPhone here replacing you. So I'm just glad.
I just recently learned how to change my name. I feel that I'm very technologically inclined.
I'm glad to see it. Progress has been made.
You're going to have to kick higher than that if you want to do any paying, Brendan. I'm just telling you now. You need to get your game together, boy.
I'll try to get every nomination for any resolution that needs to be passed tonight. So.
Oh, wonderful. I'll second them then. Don't worry.
Tonight's meeting is already shaping up to be pretty spicy, huh?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Glad you could join us. Right out of the gate, too.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We're going to have cutthroat bingo after this.
Oh, I can't wait.
Man.
Well, we're at quorum, and it is 5:32, so I think we can kick things off and call to order the February VNA board meeting, 2021 edition, and start with, it sounded like Eddie was saying that that they would be fine with taking notes, but will be coming in a little late. So I don't know if you want to
Keep it rolling.
switch over
Yeah,
when
got a doc
Eddie
started.
gets here,
Yep,
and then just
got a couple docs started
do
today.
a roll call for now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Aaron Bensinger,
Present.
Brendan Maloney,
Present.
Sarah Ruggles,
That's me.
Margaret Wilson, that's me, I'm present. Laura Satino,
I'm here.
Laura,
Can you not hear me?
we can hear you. Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
You were temporarily not visible, so I just was checking to make sure we didn't have a tech problem. But
Oh,
you
gotcha.
are
No.
loud and clear and everything is good. I have marked you here. Jeremy Turpening,
Here.
Gwendolyn Hooker, Aaron Harris, and Remy Harrington are not present. Correct me if I'm wrong and you are here and I just don't see you.
Aaron is here.
Aaron, you are here? I don't know.
I am here.
On. Hi, Aaron. Okay.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi.
I will amend that to Gwendolyn and Remy are not here and Eddie is not here yet.
Right.
Okay.
And I haven't heard anything from anybody as far as absences other than Eddie will be coming in a little late. All right, awesome. Of course, we have our consent items. I have a few amendments for our agenda as things have developed throughout the day, interestingly, and have some updates for folks. We're gonna be striking agenda item 4A. That was our first guest, Nicole and Elisa Parker. The long and short of that was that I didn't want to put anybody in an awkward position to not be aware of the format of the meeting. So I did today just kind of group invite with the Zoom link together to let everybody know the time slot. And seeing that message prompted a response from A&P Consulting, Nicole and Elisa Parker, who are awesome, by the way. I just want to speak all the praises of everything that we've discussed and all that I've learned of them so far. But I did get an email from Elisa. Gosh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's Elisa. That they are actually declining the bid at this point. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a quick minute right here in our time of the agenda where we have no time allotted for it, but this is a pretty relevant update to the agenda. And due to their absence, we do have a few extra minutes. So I'm just going to go ahead and read their email to the record because I thought it was pretty impactful and speaks for itself, which was that Elisa had to say, I wanted to reach out to you about the meeting tonight and potential for hiring A&P for this work. She did not realize that Damara was the other consultant that we were considering and would strongly advise us to hire Damara for this work. We would like to gracefully bow out of consideration for this project at this point. Damara does an excellent job walking nonprofit boards through this kind of work, and I've even hired her for this specific kind of work through other boards I've worked with. I believe Damara is the best fit to guide this board through this work, and we don't want to compete with her for this contract. We consider her a sister and expert in the field of DEI work and believe she is the best option. Thanks for considering A&P, to which I sent a appreciative response. Told her that I was humbled and inspired by the collaborative spirit of her message and thanked them for their time. And left things, I think, on a very positive note, but I felt like that was a relevant update that I wanted to share with everybody, because I felt like reading that message impacted my feelings about the layout that we're at right now in this endeavor, and I thought you should hear it directly. So that's that. And just to let everybody know, I think this might be the first month we're doing this, but I have set the settings up in our Zoom to just automatically record our meetings to the Zoom cloud, with the hope that we will be able to upload those directly to the YouTube channel, which is a little bit of a long process, but probably a little bit easier for now, at least until we have a go-to points person or a live stream. So that is what we're doing tonight. So yeah, we are removing, back to the consent items. We are removing agenda item 4A. And I can give a little bit more context to that as we get a little closer to introducing that guest. But there is also a modification to section 5, our new business and action items. Per Steve's request today that we escalate this issue tonight, as things have kind of advanced and time frames have shifted a little bit. There is a proposal to add to replace agenda item 5B with property manager position schedule. That is to say a discussion of the scheduled hours for that position as they are written into the position. Then we would be adding what would have been 5B in as 5D instead, commercial rental policy, bumping that down the list to the bottom, 5D. Maggie, did you catch that? Did you need me to repeat anything? Let me know. Sorry, you're muted.
We're changing 5B to be the discussion, and then we're bumping B and C down to being C and D. Is that correct?
C will stay the same.
C will stay as C.
So I just moved B down to the bottom instead of as B.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just say bumping it down, then I'm not gonna.
Yep, bumping it down to the bottom. Thank you. Yep. Awesome. Okay, so other than that, are there any other proposed changes or amendments to the agenda or any of the other consent items, the January meeting minutes, February EC minutes, or financial statements from January? Or if there are not, a motion to approve our consent items with those amendments to the agenda. Jeremy in with the motion, and a second for the motion, anyone?
Oh, no support, Brendan?
Someone might have seconded it with themselves muted just now, because I noticed you guys are all, I did a thing with the settings too that muted everybody automatically, so that might have thrown everyone a little bit right off the bat, sorry.
I was waiting for Brendan. I don't know.
Can't play second fiddle to Jeremy.
Sorry, was there a second to the motion to approve the consent items?
Second.
Thanks, Erin.
You're welcome.
Okay, any opposed to that, I will say, please take a moment to unmute yourself, because we can't see about half of us right now, but we'll do this verbally tonight, I think would be the best, just to keep track. And I'm gonna give it about 5 seconds more, and we're just gonna assume with no nays that unanimously passes. All right, and then we are at a little bit of time for our check-in before Damara is scheduled to join us at 6 p.m. I want to take just one more quick minute to give a little more light to the process that brought us to where we're at with having her join us tonight. and just kind of make sure we're all on the same page about the discussion and the presentation she'll give, and that we can all engage with that. And so just, I guess to recap, because it feels like a million years ago that we started this process. As I recall it, I kind of wanted to just quickly run through the timeline of what I think originally prompted a little chain of events that led us to this point. Was that we encountered some very valid questions being raised in light of contracts being awarded for art installations and mural projects. Was actually, I think, one of the original prompts that kind of unrolled a big, robust discussion about equity considerations in our processes, in our selection processes, our RFP process, our policies in general, and all that. And there was a very extremely well administered meeting that Aaron Bensinger hosted another million years ago now, where we participated in kind of a roundtable discussion, brainstorm session around directions to go to improve equity, in focusing specifically on RFP, but really, I think since then it's kind of ballooned out to a bigger picture idea of lots of different ways that equity is vital to every corner of our operations and our mission and our strategy. And that kind of led us to a bit of a catch-22 in the very limited capacity of our organization to be able to take on this type of work internally, and also the kind of burning need for some of these things to play out in real time as we encounter the situations where equitable decisions need to be made. So that led us to seeking a paid consultant relationship partnership. And Damara was actually one of the first names to come up. And then a lot of other referrals came my way, and over the course of several more months, and while we were in recess even, there was a process of reaching out and trying to identify those who were available. I would say I think it was about 7 referrals I got. And of those 7, if I recall, 3 I got no response from, and 1 was responded that they did not have capacity to take on any work right now. Another responded that they don't actually really do the kind of work that we were looking for, which left us with the 2 that had been scheduled for tonight. A&P and Damara, I had initial conversations with both of their agencies and suggested that they come to talk to the board. So that's where we're at tonight. I hope that was helpful in some way to kind of just bring us back to where we're at. I didn't want to just assume that everybody remembers every nuanced detail or was even there for every single meeting to put it all together, put the story together of where we're at right now. So that being said, A&P having kind of declined the bid and put all of our eggs in Tamara's basket at this point, I think speaks to, I would say, a very, very strong reference backing up her as our top candidate at this point. So the other alternative, which could be considered, that is the only thing I think would be left at this point, would be to broaden our search outside of local consultants to people who are just in remote corners of the country who do just very specific tailored work. That's been a possibility, but I think it's not one we've pursued yet. So I guess at this point, what I wanted to ask is whether there is a feeling among those present tonight, whether we would better use the next 15 minutes before Damara joins us to discuss basically questions or comments or thoughts of where we're at in relation to kind of the narrative I just described, and use some time to be thoughtful and intentional about our approach to our conversation with Damara tonight, given that circumstances have kind of aligned differently from what I was expecting going into this meeting yesterday. Or if that's not a conversation that feels necessary or valuable, we can take these, I guess we're down to 13 minutes for a check-in. And I am going to decline to give my opinion on which way we should go with that.
I think we should just talk over the consultants, but.
We could vote. I don't know if we need to vote, but.
Then I second Brendan. I think that's a good idea.
Is there anybody who would prefer to do a check-in right now? We could also do a check-in after Damara is done with the conversation if we want to come back to it afterwards. We had discussed that possibility already in the EC meeting. Anyway, it sounds like let's take a few minutes to just kind of return our brains to thoughts of long ago, which, you know, is basically trying to strategize. I think what are the things that we most want or need to achieve by taking on the responsibility, which I think it's important to emphasize that it is a responsibility and a commitment that we would be taking on in setting up a partnership and finding room in our budget to do so. Of course, you know, we can schedule that to begin at X, Y, or Z point, but I think really we need to kind of identify the core goals, which I feel like we've done in a very scattered way through many conversations, but maybe that's something we could come back to now if we can kind of reach back to what some of those were.
Hey, Sarah, I see that there's a consulting quote from ANP in here, but I don't see one from Damara. Did she provide an actual quote or?
Yeah, I mentioned in my email that she has not provided that yet. But she did email me to say that after she speaks with us, she feels like she'll be able to come up with a good proposal for us. And she wanted to wait until after tonight's conversation. So she just confirmed that either yesterday or today.
For me, what seems really important out of this work is, you know, it would be nice to come up with a partner or someone who would do an implicit bias training at like once a year or something like that when all the new boards come on. Because we rotate so much and we're actually doing the work, it would be great to have some type of equity training just built into our framework. So when we're gone, that other people get the same onboarding.
Other people's ideas of what you're thinking about when we think about what the core driving force is in this process or forces?
I actually think that's a bit why we have floundered on doing this quickly, is because it's a very large, it's not one goal, it's an ongoing process.
Mhm.
And so the thing we need to do, and that we've struggled to do, is identify bite-sized pieces of ways that we can, in things we're currently doing, enact more equity. So I think maybe that's the thing we need the most advice about, is because I think as we've rolled through this, we have made movements and made attempts, and as a board, tried to be more equitable and done things in more equitable ways. And I don't think it's not an end goal. So we just need to figure out, what do we need to do? So we got stuck with the process, and the thing that, like, as you said, the thing that flagged it for us was getting called on not being equitable about the way we were awarding artistic projects. But that's just the piece that got flagged because that was what was happening at the time. And we recognize that those structures of inequity or process of inequity operate in all of our ways of being and the things we do, all of our ways that the way we're doing commercial rentals, the way we're doing tenancies for residential stuff, the way that we're awarding contracts for all of our work that we get done. I mean, it's a pervasive issue. And so we struggled even to figure out how to get a consultant when our request for proposals process was inequitable. So how do we even find the right person? So, like, I think our first question should maybe be, where do we start?
Yeah. I am guessing Tamara probably has a good answer to that question.
Yeah.
That's a good question to bring up tonight. So let's earmark that.
For us to say, like, here's our goal would be a little disingenuous, because we have a million goals and no goals at the same time. So we need to ask her, where do we start?
Thank you.
And I love Brendan's idea. And actually, that's something we could just do, right? Like, we don't need an equity consultant to do that. We need a partnership, but we don't need someone to tell us to do it, because Brendan just told us to do it. So we can just do it. We just need to find out who should do it, right?
Yeah.
We could just say, did you do this?
Yeah, that is absolutely an activity that can supplement this partnership. Yeah, but it doesn't have to necessarily be part of it or under the jurisdiction of it.
Right.
But it would complement it very well. And if I could just take one quick second to make sure, I think what I heard you say was, like, a goal is oversight of our processes, just at least like a broad kind of, in a broad sense, for a period of time, that will just give an extra perspective, or maybe let me know if that's not on the mark with what part of what you're saying. And then kind of like almost like a points person for issues as they arise, to be almost like on call for a period of time that will allow us to go through a process of review and improvement. But maybe I'm wrong, but
I mean, so that sounds like a great, like, plan for a solution to what we're trying to do. But I think we should ask her what her advice is about how we solve it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, maybe her thought is, well, you guys need to get your equity committee running, and here's some guidelines for them to use every time something comes up that needs to get reviewed. Or maybe her thing is, no, you need external advice on how to do this, or you're going to get lost in the weeds. Like, I don't know. This is her job. She's an expert. She has better ideas about how to solve this than we do. That's what I think. I think we ask her.
Thank you.
We say, hey, we're on this journey. What do we do next? That's what I think we say to
her. Just to add one small element of perspective to the question that I posed, which is, I kind of agree. It's a bit of a dud question because we've been asking that question, right? And we don't have an answer for it exactly. But part of the reason I asked it is because in my initial, 15 to 30 minute conversations with these folks already, that question arose in both conversations. That question came from them on both occasions with unsolicited. And so it feels like an important question. And I don't know that we are expected to have an answer, but it feels like a core question that we need to be heading into everything with. And maybe that's our first goal, is to figure out the answer to that question.
I think it's worth adding too, to not like, how to say what I'm trying to say. So I think that an additional sort of angle that we need to take into account is that this, making our organization more equitable is not just about crisis response to when we mess up, but to, educating and then holding accountable specifically the white people in this organization to, making sure that we are being really conscious and inclusive in our decision-making processes, and that we're all on the same page about what being an equitable organization means to us and why we're doing it, so that crisis situations happen less often.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm hearing you. I think that some of the key words you just said, educating and holding the white VNA folks accountable, sounds core. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Couple more minutes, I think, before our first guest in so long.
I have a question that kind of dovetails with what I just shared, I guess. Is there like a process in place for like what the process of choosing to bring a consultant on is going to look like? Like is there an individual or a committee or what have you that are, accountable for making sure that it happens?
That is a great question. And the answer is not super satisfying, but yes, there is a process written into our financial procedures from the 90s. And I can go over that briefly now, since it is our active document that has not been updated. Consideration will be made of internal capabilities to accomplish services before contracting for them. Written contracts clearly defining work to be performed. Terms and conditions will be maintained for all consultant and contract services. The qualifications of the consultant and reasonableness of fees will be considered in hiring consultants. Consultant services will be paid for as work is performed or as delineated in the contract. The board of directors will approve audit and other significant contract. The bookkeeper will prepare 1099 returns for consultant at year end. That's what we have to go on as far as policy goes.
Cool. So
sorry.
Totally. So is there, and so this kind of goes back to the conversation that we had in our one-on-one, right? But I'm curious if there is somebody whose responsibility is to like get the contract drawn up, lead, make sure that it comes before the board and that we have appropriate discussion and all that, just because I would hate to have this effort get stuck in red tape purgatory as things sometimes do.
Yeah, contracts for the VNA, all contracts are under the jurisdiction of Steve's position in as far as arranging them and setting them up. And then it does say that, let's see, trying to find out. I really thought it mentioned the board in here somewhere, but it might not even. It might be in a different section, but it largely falls within Steve's operational jurisdiction to arrange and award contract. Dollar amounts of things always fall under board approval according to different thresholds, but yeah, good questions.
Thanks for that context.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well. Any other thoughts before we? So I did ask that we look at a 5-minute like presentation introduction period for the guests, and then about 10 minutes for Q&A after that. So that's kind of what we're aiming for, but we do have like a little extra time with one instead of two guests. So, and here is Damara now. Hello, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Sorry, I was running a little behind. My daughter actually was washing dishes and she accidentally cut herself, and so I was tending to her, and so I'm so sorry. How's everybody doing this evening?
We're good, and that's definitely more important than us. So thanks for prioritizing that.
That is true. That is true. Luckily, she's okay.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes, she's all right, but I'll reach. You know, she's 15, so I'll revisit her, but she's good to go now. So. So Sarah, I know that you talked about the format, 5 minutes for the presentation, and then Q&A. So do you want me to stick with that for the time that we have tonight?
Damara, we were just talking about that, and it's so nice to see you again. I will say, just gotta say, like, welcome, and it's a little embarrassing, but you're our first guest of pandemic times for our board meetings. So it really feels like touching normal almost out there a little bit. It feels really nice to have you here, and thank you for your time. And I hope you got my follow-up message earlier. But yeah, the 5 and 10 was what we had talked about. But per my follow-up information, we have a little buffer, like, maybe 5-10 extra minutes if each chunk of time needs to send out a few.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So I guess it'll be more of I guess we can have it be more of like a conversation. So if you have questions as we go, as I go, then let me know that. So perfect. Good to be back with all of you. Thanks so much for having me, for considering me for this next iteration of work. I know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is really on your mind. That's why you reached out to me. And I have been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space for, the last 13 years that I have had my consulting practice. And even before that, I worked for the National Resource Center for Racial Healing for a couple years, and got a lot of training from them even before I started my practice. And so when I was with the National Resource Center, part of my responsibility was to manage structural racism task forces that were focused on things like the criminal justice system and education and healthcare and things of that nature. And so as I moved into the consulting realm, I, continued to support organizations on their capacity in the DEI space and really customizing the approach that I have. When I first started out, I did a lot of training as like a first step. And I realized that, training is really one strategy, a part of the whole, right? And so what I do now is I approach this from a organizational assessment perspective and really thinking about, what are your strengths? What are your opportunities to grow from based on real data? And then the data that speaks, tells a picture about where Vine is, and honoring and celebrating that while also giving you an opportunity to grow across, all of your organizational systems. So you might be thinking, well, gosh, we just did this organizational assessment not too long ago, and that I facilitated. And the difference with this process versus the process that you went through is that again, it's a very customized process. There's a lot of qualitative evaluation that data that's collected to tell the story. And then again, depending on what I'm doing with my client, they decide, who are the right people to be engaged in this process? Who do we need to be hearing from on these issues? And then we take it from there. So, for example, I have a client right now that I'm working with. It was really important for them to get stakeholder feedback. So we're doing a lot of, I'm doing 15-minute interviews right now with their stakeholders across 3 different categories. And then I interviewed all of their board members, all of their staff for like a semi-structured interview process. And then I have this framework that I use in looking at your 10 organizational systems, and there are indicators that are several indicators that fall within each of those organizational system categories. And then from there, you get a snapshot shot of, you know, your entire organization, context for, you know, why people are responding the way that they are. And then there's a report, of course, that comes out of it, and recommendations are embedded in that report. So I'm not saying that that is the like only approach, but it is the approach that I usually take when I'm working with organizations, both small and large. I mean, I have clients that have as many as 200 employees, and then I have some clients that it's all a volunteer-based organization. So I have, you know, the entire gamut. What questions do you have? I don't know if that was 5 minutes, but what questions do you have about that?
So I guess my question is, would you, so I think would probably fall on the relatively small end and mostly volunteers, right? We have only a couple staff and one contract employee.
Yeah.
And I think we think that we have kind of narrowed in on some of the places where we see that our organization doesn't always act equitably, but we have had a hard time getting traction on figuring ourselves out how to fix those things.
Sure.
So I feel like we do have some ideas about what we want to fix as an organization, but I also worry that we don't see the things we don't see. So sure. I would kind of reflect back to you, like, what do you think? Where would you start with us? Like, what would be your thought pulling? What thread would you first pull to help us figure out what we actually need to fix?
Yeah, and I appreciate it a lot because, you know, understanding that, God, you know, this is where we are and this is where we think we are, and this recognition be blind. Priority areas do you gaps?
Sorry, are y'all having audio issues or is it just on my end?
Yes.
Oh, yep. Aaron was saying the same thing.
Sorry, Damara, your audio was cutting out there. Sometimes cutting the video for briefly can help.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. Okay, so what about now? Can you hear me okay?
It seems to be freezing periodically, but it looks like it's kind of the video end of things. So maybe try turning off your video for a little bit.
Okay, all right, and then just keep talking. Can you hear me okay now?
This sounds better.
Okay, because I can always go to another part of my house as well.
I think we're good with audio now.
Okay, beautiful. So I'll stay off camera for a little bit just to be safe then. And so I'll start by saying that I really appreciate you illuminating that, right? Like we have some sense of consciousness about where we're at. You're not starting off on the journey. You know, you're not just starting off on the journey. Let me say, you've been on the journey. I'm not sure what all has entailed in that journey. And so what I'm curious about is what insight do you have about what your priorities should be right now? What do you think they should be? And that question could be for Margaret, or for anyone who is in the space right now.
Damara, one of the things that I see on a regular basis with our group is we are all white. And when we try to be more inclusive, we went for all Black individuals. And I wonder if there's a way that we could be better served by letting others know that being in our group or in our association isn't a color requirement as much as just showing the equity or the diversity of our neighborhood. And I think that's where we fall short, is we don't get a great amount of representation from the minority community at our annual meeting, and that's when we lose the chance of gaining valuable members that might be more or way more diverse than we are now.
Sure, sure. And I assume that's you, Jeremy. Jeremy, you just said that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, beautiful. So what I will say about this is that I would get really curious about why people aren't coming. Right. And this is where the stakeholder perspective becomes really important in a process like this, because people aren't showing up for a reason. And we don't want to make assumptions about why people aren't showing up. We want to ask the people why they're not actually showing up. What would compel them to be more connected to the organization? What do people need? What do they want? And I do think that one of the challenging things about doing this work authentically on the back of the movement as we all know it now, right, on the backs of George Floyd and our sister Breonna Taylor, and like it's something it's become so visible, even though this is not really new, right, but it's become visible. It's raised our collective consciousness, and so the challenge with that, though, because there's a shadow side to everything, is that we may feel compelled to just do something for the sake of doing it, and then this feels like the thing that we're supposed to do. Right. And so one of the things that I recommend my clients to do, or my potential clients to do, is just like slow to fast. And then if you really want to know what people want and need, we have to engage people in collecting their stories, and not just one or two people, right? Like anecdotally, we need to be able to quantify themes associated with your neighborhood around things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? What are barriers that prevent people to have a seat at the table? And I would also be curious, and this is also where engaging in a process where you're collecting anonymous feedback from staff, from board members, is so important, along with stakeholder feedback, because what you guys are stakeholders, along with other stakeholder feedback. Because also for your board members of color, in which I know that you had some at the time that I was working with you, I would be curious what their perspective is, right? Like on what does it feel like to serve on the board of Vine within the context of these concepts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so again, customizing a process could also allow us to not only hear from the current board members, but I would say that any person of color that has been on your board, we would want to potentially engage them in that process, because it's an opportunity to gain insight that we may not otherwise have. And even though we may have, exit interviews in place and things of that nature, there is still there's a safety issue. There's a psychological safety issue around these topics. And so you may feel that, anything is really on the table and we can talk about anything, but, people aren't always going to tell you what they feel, particularly around these topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we ask directly, which is why, the anonymity is so important. And you'd be amazed at the things that people tell me in a process like this, because they know that it's safe. Like there's a it's like you're an outsider. You're going to take my perspective and you're going to put it in a theme. And don't get me wrong, I use quotes and things of that nature as it makes sense, taking out things that would reveal folks' identities. But from a contextual standpoint, I think it's really important to have quotes. So I know I answered it in a more than just directly, Jeremy, but I wanted to really talk about the importance of authentically approaching this work. And when we authentically approach this work, we're doing it based on the unique insights about our organization, about our community, within the context of the times that we're in, and naturally, of course, also honoring the history, whatever that means in the context of housing. Is that helpful, Jeremy, and everyone else?
Tamara, that was a brilliant answer. And I feel like I was just educated a little bit. And I feel like we ought to have already started paying you for this, because that was very insightful answer. Thank you so much. Of course. I wanted to draw back to a couple of things that we actually just discussed right before you came in, because a couple folks identified some possible goals along the lines of what you're asking about right now. A couple of things that came up were implicit bias training, or I guess maybe implicit bias, like aptitude, cognizance, raising the bar of that in our organization. I think oversight was part of the discussion as I heard it. Oversight of our processes, kind of in a practical way, educating and accountability for the white folks in our organization in particular. And I would add, I think what came up indirectly in our conversation was policy, our policies and procedures, kind of overhauling or creating a better lens of equity to create more equitable policies and procedures.
Okay.
And I'll let people add to that as
Great.
well.
Thank you.
I would add that I think that we have some pretty well-worn paths for decision-making in this organization that are inequitable, or that the Black women members of our board have been kind enough to let the white folks who paved those paths know that the ways that we're making decisions are inequitable. And even with that knowledge, we have struggled to create equitable decision-making processes and mechanisms. To kind of expound on what Sarah was saying about oversight and policy.
Yeah. So there's it sounds like governance in general is a major part of this work that you want to focus on. And so I'm curious then, thank you for that. Have the people of color also shared what that might look like? Or have they just shared that it's problematic the way that, or there's an opportunity to improve the way you do decision making to make it more equitable?
In some instances, specific, they have done a great job sharing their knowledge and educating us in the specific instances and how those could have been better, but that doesn't always translate easily into changing entrenched institutional structures, if that makes sense. So a lot of the thing that gave birth to recognizing this for us is that we have awarded money to do art projects on our building and around the neighborhood. And we just sort of take these paths of the known artists that we have. And that's incredibly inequitable. And that was pointed out to us, that that's who's not in the room. Who do we not know? That's where we're missing it. But then also that, and I mean, and maybe this is just my own personal piece that I found super profound and really changed my perspective on things. But the idea that even the definition of what's traditionally the formal process for even doing that is inequitable and sets aside already existing systems of the creation and sharing of art that minority communities have that are equally valid to our, let's get you a portfolio and train you how to apply for a grant so you can operate in the world we already have. And that opened up for my mind like a huge space where we as a society are not equitable, and as an organization, as an extension of our society, really inequitable. And that makes it hard to figure out how do you responsibly operate an organization in a world that has financial requirements and licensing requirements and legal requirements, but all those requirements have an element of inequity, and we still need to maintain, be between the rails of those requirements external to us, but at the same time we recognize that's not equitable. So it's not equitable that some groups are, to extend the metaphor, the lesson of art to contractors that work on our building, you have to have a license, you have to have a certain amount of training, and there are barriers to equity in all of those. But you can't not have someone licensed, because then that's a safety issue and it's a legal issue. And though, I mean, that's where I get stuck in the weeds. There's becomes a huge problem. And the pieces we can fix directly are small, and it's a process that doesn't have an endpoint. You just continuously keep working towards doing it better. I don't know. Maybe I've gone off.
Yeah, no. You articulated it. You articulated it very well, and I wanna respond with a couple different things. I mean, part of building this muscle around equity is what you said. It never really stops, right? And so there's tension around the bureaucracy of our work, the protection associated with our organization, and also supporting what it means to be equitable. And what I always advise people is that wherever there's room for equity, we want to be intentional about creating it. And I'm going to say that again, wherever there is room for equity, we want to be intentional about creating it. Which might mean, of course, when you talk about the fact that you've got to have licensed contractors working on the building, then the question becomes, where are licensed folks that are out there that we can find to make sure that our pool is diverse? That goes outside of the traditional strategies that we employ to find people, right? And so really what it comes down to is equity embedded everywhere where equity can be embedded. And that's what we're striving towards. Now, we know that there's always going to be limitations to approaching this work. There's always going to be a muscle that we're building. There's always going to be more that we can do, more that we can analyze within the scope. And I think that if we focus on the ways in which we can't provide equity because of barriers, then we miss the innovation associated with all the ways that we can. And so there's a saying that comes out of the Course in Miracles. I do a lot of mindset work that says we can focus on the problem, we can focus on the solution. And really all that means is that we focus on the problem just long enough to have an understanding of it, and then we get into solution mode. We want to recognize that this is the issue that we're faced with, and let's figure out how we're going to fix it. If we can fix it, what we need to address it. And so for some institutions where it's like, well, guys, we want to do more to bridge the gap around equity, it might mean expanding how we do our work. It might mean an apprenticeship program down the road. I'm not sure what that means in the context of Vine or any organization that I am privileged to work with. But what I do know is that there are endless opportunities for us to lean into this within our realm of control. And that's what we want to focus on in our work together. And back to the decision-making component, there are ways that we can govern that does make room for the collective, for more of the collective. So then part of our work, if indeed it's about addressing how you govern to make it more equitable in nature, there are ways that we can certainly design, to be able to do that, right? I mean, your policies and procedures, and taking a look at them and infusing diversity, equity, and inclusion as much as possible through all of that. But of course, one of the challenges that I find with clients is that, they can go through all of this work. I'm not saying that Vine would do this. I'm not saying that at all. I really think that there's a desire to do this. I've spent some time with you guys, and some people do say they want to take on this work because it's the trendy thing to do right now, right? And I will say that as a capacity builder, I'm certainly not interested in that, right? I want to be aligned with organizations that are, ready to roll up their sleeves and do the work necessary, and that the words that they put on paper, they're living these things out. There's tension always around, who we are and who it is that we're becoming, because there's no arrival point around what it means to activate with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind. There's only practice. There's a foundation, and there's reflection, and there's practice. Foundation, reflection, practice. And that's something that you keep cycling through, right, as you evolve as an organization. So I'll stop right there, and I'd love to hear some perspectives from folks.
Yeah, we can take a few more minutes for maybe some closing thoughts. And I think we have heard a lot of really awesome info so far, but Eddie, go ahead and
I'm going to try to go back on
comments.
camera really quickly as we end.
All right. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. All right. So Eddie, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to point out too that some of like the RFP process for the art is an example where a policy or something that we have established as like a, you know, best practice kind of led us into the rabbit hole of all our other policies and best practices. And we kind of started looking at even our mission statement. It kind of made us do a major overhaul. And that was a good, I felt that was a pretty good starting place too, to just see that a lot of the stuff was written in the 90s and needs some tweaking and just more updating. Is that pretty standard then for like organizations that, as well intentioned as their boards were, you know, have to try sometimes just go through everything and fine tooth comb it and make sure that what, you know, a lot of the guidelines that we follow are current and up to date with the best language and the best intentions or best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, I mean, you guys are certainly not alone in that. And I commend you for going through that work, because sometimes I was just having a conversation with someone about tradition and how tradition is the very thing that is inequitable. Tradition interferes with equity. And so we've got to be willing to say, guys, you know, if we're really serious about this, let's take a look at where we're at and let's modify. You know, I'm the vice chair of the YWCA board, and I was their nominating chair for about 4 years as well on our nominating committee. And I just went through that process at the nominating committee level as I was stepping down and moving into just fully into my vice chair role, because that's where it begins, right? Like this is what begins the process of who we're going to identify and who we're going to invite to serve on this board, right? And then leadership is everything. And so we want to be able to find the right people up front, and then we want to be able to support the capacity of the people who are at the table to be able to carry out the policies the way in which they've been written, both internally and, you know, internally with staff, and then externally, of course, with the board. So is that helpful, Eddie?
Yeah, and I think one other instance that came to mind, I'm sorry, I've been, a lot of kids coming through, is the situation where we stopped our agenda and made a statement about Black Lives Matter. Like we just cut out Robert's rules, you know, just had to stop our normal procedure of just being super strict to agenda with timekeeping and stuff. Like someone had to keep calling for 5 more minutes, and it just, we're like, okay, we just need to stop. Like recognize that this is an important need in the moment. Like that was really eye-opening to see like how just our procedures, like the strict adherence to Robert rules or following agenda to the T and asking, like the time check person in that moment, like I felt, yes, Laura, I felt like so bad for them, because they're like, okay, I'm sorry, we just need to, like, do we want 5 more minutes on this? And there's like, it was a very heartfelt, moving, emotional, like there was a lot going on in that moment. And I just want to lift that up too. Like we can get in our own way, even in the process of trying to like process. So
I love what you're saying. I know that we've got to, and I know we're, you know, you got other things that you need to cover tonight. So I'll just say this final thing. That governance structure alone prevents you from being equitable. I'm just being really honest. And so if we're really talking about like overhauling things, I would highly recommend we look at another governance modality, and particularly something that's going to allow you for more generative discussions. There are 3 modes of governance, right? The first one is about fiscal oversight. Most organizations do that fairly well. Less of them do the strategic mode of governance well, right? Where the board is actually engaged in planning. And then the last one, which we see, a very small percentage of organizations do this well, is the generative discussion. And it's the generative discussion that actually helps you to support equity and inclusion. Because without spaces where people can have a voice, what's the point? Then it just becomes business as usual, right? And then, so I would, I'm not saying what the supreme governance model is. I'm saying that whatever governance model you land on, it's going to be really important for you to have lots of space for generative kinds of activities. And so that's all I've got. I mean, just based on the time that you've given me, that's all I've got. So
thank you so much, Tamara. This was a really positive discussion. I feel like I think I can try to speak for our board to say that we got a lot out of this. And I feel like we're in a really good forward trajectory right now. And really appreciate your time, really appreciate your wisdom, and I'm sure we will be in touch.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Well, you guys have a wonderful night. If there's anything else that you think of, just let me know. As I shared with Sarah, the way that I approach work with potential clients is putting together a formal proposal to make sure that I'm on the same page with what your needs are, and that we're speaking the same language. And so I'll just wait to hear from you, and you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay, we have lots of new business tonight, and some old business that is coming back to us. The first and very important one is possible action on amendments, exceptions, or variants to our bylaws for purposes of administering hybrid style election in May and holding an annual meeting in a different format. So I think I will hand it over to our ad hoc election committee, if I can call you guys that, to come back to the proposed amendments that were sent a couple weeks ago now. And everybody should have gotten that email on February 5th with those proposed changes. So we've had some time to look that over. Maybe should we start by asking if anyone had any questions about what was in that email, whether anybody is unclear or would like, or we can just start with an explanation and an overview.
Yeah, so there are some pieces that we know we're going to need to request a exception for, an exemption for the election. And as I worked my way through it, I realized like some of these I think we could permanently rewrite. I think it serves us well to fix pieces of the bylaws as we interact with them. That said, if anyone is uncomfortable with the sections about membership and dues, the rewording of it, I will just table that for now, because I don't think that's a good use of our time, because we can just grant ourselves an exception and revisit repealing and replacing parts of the bylaws after the election or at a time when we have some more time. Did everybody have a chance to read over the parts that I was hoping to replace and what I wanted to replace them with? And does anybody have any questions specific to that? Okay, I'm going to take that voluminous silence as acquiescence. I could read what we were going to repeal into the record. It's rather long. does anyone wish me to do that?
I am pasting it into the chat right now. Jeremy, did you have a chance to review those that Maggie sent in an email on February 5th, those proposed changes already?
Yes, I'm totally in favor of removing garbage from bylaws under any circumstances.
Okay, I'm gonna paste the rest of this in here. Just bear with me.
So section 4.1 discusses who's eligible to be a member of the Vine. Section 4.2 talks about membership dues, which we have never assessed, and I can't imagine why we would assess them. So that one was a pretty easy change. I just said we shall not assess dues from our members. And section 4.3 is just another piece of membership and what it means. The biggest changes are getting rid of dues, just saying we're not going to do it. We don't really need a bunch of language talking about something we're never going to do. And the changes that we discussed at our last meeting, which is opening up who is considered a member. And that is any person over the age of 18 who is either a resident, property owner, or employed within the boundaries of the Vine Neighborhood Association, as defined in Article 3.1, which is in parentheses, which is basically just gives the boundaries of what our neighborhood is eligible for membership in the association. Membership may be declined in writing. All members shall have the same rights, responsibilities, and privileges. That's would be the entirety of section 4.1. Section 4.2, membership dues. The board shall not assess dues from members. Section 4.3, members. Membership is contingent upon maintaining status as outlined in section 4.1 and is revoked upon loss of that status. Members shall be entitled to vote on all matters which members are entitled to vote upon in Michigan nonprofit corporations organized on a membership basis. That's straight out of the old one. It seemed like legalese that meant something, so I left it in there because even though it kind of says like, if you're a member, you get to be a member, I thought there must be a reason. And it's not, I don't know, seemed like it should have stayed. And each member shall be entitled to cast one vote. That's all the new. I'm going to make a motion that we repeal 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 and replace it with the language that I just read. Can I have a second?
Second.
Can I?
I beat you, Jeremy.
Okay. All right. The motion is seconded, and before we vote, we're going to have a little.
Wait. Sorry. Point of order. I would like to make a comment before we go ahead with it.
Yes.
So actually, yeah, we're in discussion on this motion right now. So go ahead, Erin.
Okay. Cool. Yes, I am. I think this is a good idea. I also want to learn from our past mistakes and be open to the possibility that automatically granting everybody in the neighborhood membership might not be what the majority of people in the neighborhood want. And I also, so I brought this up in an email to Maggie a month or so ago. I think that if we do go ahead with these changes, that we should have a plan for how we're going to inform folks in the neighborhood about this change and make folks' rights to revoke consent very, very clear. In case there is anybody who, for any reason, would not want to be associated with the Vine Neighborhood Association by default, or who wouldn't want their name on a public roster as being a member. Yeah. I just thought that was important to mention. So
yeah, I think that's a good thing. I will say too, part of, and actually, Steve, did you hear back from Leo about whether he thought this was legal?
No, I've not heard back.
Okay, well, I'm going to actually say then that we should table this until we know that for sure. And also to your point about people not wanting to have their name on a list, if I have interpreted the law correctly, that governs this for us, it does not technically say you have to have a name on the list. It says the list must be alphabetized and include addresses. So what I did is I asked Steve for our mailing list, which then has every address in the neighborhood. And I thought if this was what we adopted, I would take the further step of asking the city to give me a list of all the business licenses in the neighborhood, because I think that the addresses only have residences and not businesses. And then if I put those together, that would be a list. And then the only other piece we would have is then a list of people who don't want to be members. And that would be the only place where someone's name would show up. So like that gives people a level of anonymity that I thought might be comforting if that was someone who would be concerned about not wanting their name just automatically entered on a list. Yeah, but given that we don't have legal check mark on it, and that we do have some discussion to be had about how do we want to notify people, and maybe that we're at the beginning of doing some equity, there might be some feedback that comes from that. I think it makes sense to table this and just waive sections 4.1 and 4.3 for the purposes of the election. Does that seem reasonable to people, or does anyone have an objection?
Is that going to give enough time for us to be able to move forward?
Yeah, because as long as we waive 4.1 and 4.3 with the other 2 sections we need to waive to be able to make this election work, it gives us the same freedom. I just thought if I'm going to look at these and I see an obvious fix for them and I'm going to write it anyway, we might as well adopt it. But if there's anything in the way, we just put it to the side and move forward. So it's not a barrier to our timeline at all.
Right, so that's why in the agenda, I made sure to leave some fluidity for different options of a temporary exception or variance versus an amendment. And it's sounding like we are not, I think, Maggie, if I'm not wrong, your motion was to amend originally.
Yes.
So are you rescinding that motion right now, it sounds like?
Yeah, I think we should table that motion.
So then that would leave open the possibility of a motion to grant a temporary variance through the end of this fiscal year to the contingencies in those 2 sections, 4.1 and 4.3 of membership requirements.
Yes. And then we also need, so I think we need to make a motion to temporarily suspend those for the purpose of getting through the election. I don't know. The fiscal year would end, when does our fiscal year end? Isn't our fiscal year just about to end?
It ends
I think we should,
at the same time.
May 31st.
Or like at the end of May.
oh, okay.
May
I
31st.
couldn't remember if it was end of April or end of May.
It's kind of what determines the new appointments and that schedule, our annual schedule. So is there then a motion for a variance or a temporary waiver of those sections of the bylaws in order to administer an election by mail, by mailing ballots out to folks around the neighborhood? We had talked also about allowing multiple votes to come in from one mailing per household. Yeah. So that's still an open possibility, but are there any questions? I mean, we can start before a motion. I actually wanted to also, I guess it's kind of tabled, but also suggest that we discuss or consider lowering the age threshold for membership as we talked about in the past, if we were going to continue later and come back to this as a possible amendment.
I think legally our lowest age for members is 16.
Under state law, usually it's an age of consent for the state to belong to any organization or association where accepted responsibilities may be given. So the age of assumed responsibility in the state of Michigan is 16, unless you have a junior chapter.
So then it sounds like we could possibly consider an amendment down to the age of eligibility at 16. But again, I think we're tabling that at this moment. That was really my only comment about that. Any other questions about it? Discussion or another motion?
I make a motion that we temporarily suspend until the end of the fiscal year 4.1 and 4.3 of our bylaws for the assumption of our annual meeting and the nomination and election of new officers.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote for this one, since it is a
Should
matter
we,
of
can we fold in all the ones we need to, is it inappropriate to fold them all into a motion? Because we have a couple of other sections of our bylaws that we need to also suspend to make this work. And then just do one vote? It could be faster.
Oh,
If we got more, I can add more.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're talking, I forgot, we need to go to 4.12 and 5.2 as well, right? Sorry,
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
4.12 allows people to vote by mail instead of just at the annual meeting. Suspending that does. And then 5.2 allows us to run 6 people instead of 3.
Oh, yeah, we have to make that amendment anyway, so I amend my motion to make those stipulations as well for this year, ending fiscally May 31st.
So that's 4.1, 4.3, 4.12, and 5.2.
Correct.
And Eddie, if that's too much, we can put it in afterward because I have it all in writing anyways.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, someone say this slower.
Okay, so Jeremy has amended his motion to include sections 4.1, 4.3, 4.12, and 5.2. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
And specifically that you said to suspend the
4.1 and 4.3.
Okay, so we're
and then we should
suspending-
add 4.12 and 4.25.
Maybe just, sorry guys, because section 5.2 is pretty long and some of these sections have quite a bit in them. I'm wondering if we need to get a little more specific with those other sections. Because suspending all of section 5.2 there's just a lot more in there than just the clause.
We're not suspending 5.2, we're amending it for the adoption of, instead of 3 elected, it'll be 6 elected positions.
Okay.
We're just changing that temporarily for 1 year's use.
Okay, so we're not, maybe we need 2 motions, I think, because we're talking about suspending certain sections and then a variance for another section, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think your first motion was pretty simple and straightforward to suspend those requirements for membership.
Okay, I go back to my original motion with Aaron's second to suspend 4.1 and 4.3.
All right, and you wanted to do a roll call vote, Sarah?
Sounds like a good idea.
I'll call that Eddie to make it easier. Is that okay with you?
I have a quick question then. For note's sake, 4.1, 2, and 5.2, are we just not including that right now?
That'll be in the next motion.
Right, we're gonna do a separate motion for a variance. This one is for suspending those small sections specific to membership.
Okay, then yes, I'm fine.
Okay, Aaron Bensinger.
Yes. That's the response you're looking for, yeah? Maggie, you're muted.
I probably did that. Sorry, everyone. I have like 5 pieces of paper and 2 computers going, and somebody has the mouse backwards, so I have to remember to click the other finger, and it's just too much. So give a yay or a nay, or answer in the chat, or raise a hand if you don't want to say yes. If you want to say yes, just say yes. Eddie DeGraw. Thumbs up in the affirmative. Brenda Maloney. Thumbs up in the affirmative.
Yes.
Sarah Ruggles.
Yes.
Margaret Wilson, I'll say yes. Laura Satino.
Yes.
Jeremy Turpening.
Yes.
And Aaron Harris. Thumbs up in the affirmative.
That unanimously passes for those 2 sections. That leaves us with 4.12
And I would like to make a motion for 4.12 to be adapted to include mail-in ballots for the purpose of our election for this year, ending fiscally May 31st, and for the adoption of 4.52 to adapt it to allow for 6 elections total as opposed to 3 in the years and the terms, including 3 3-year terms and 3 2-year terms.
So point of clarification here in section 4.12, we are talking specifically about the wording, members who are physically handicapped or incapacitated may vote by proxy at a meeting. All other members must vote in person at the meeting. Really, all we're looking at is suspending the language that says all other members must vote in person at the meeting. I think if we just suspend that one clause, that covers this. Correct?
Okay, we can adapt it to state that we are allowing mail-in voting. So take out any required language of present to include that we allow mail-in voting.
We were also hoping to allow for ballots to be dropped off.
Okay.
So that because if we only allow mail-in, that leaves us with still having to figure out how to have a ballot that allows everyone in a multi-person household to vote. And we want to have the option, if we can't figure out how to do that efficiently, that they can come and get a ballot in person and fill it out in person and drop it off in person before the day of the election.
Okay.
So, okay, then I completely rescind my motion and then I would say I would move for 4.12 to allow for the reception of ballots in any form that we need viable to this year's election, including drop off and mail-in. And then for 4.52, allowing for 6 elections with 3 terms, including 3 years and 3 elected seats involving 2 years. That's better.
I will support that motion.
Are we ready for a roll call? Or are we finished with discussion? Aaron Bensinger.
Yes.
Eddie DeGraw. Affirmative with the thumbs up. Brendan Maloney.
Yes.
Sarah Ruggles.
Yes.
Margaret Wilson, I say yes.
What about me?
Laura Satino.
Yes.
Jeremy Turpening.
Yes.
Aaron Harris.
Yes.
What about me?
You're not 16. You can't vote. Get
Mommy?
out.
Mommy?
Okay. I think that wraps up through required actions for 5A. Sounds good. Bringing us to the new 5B, which we bumped our commercial rental policy down the list to replace with the property management position schedule. A conversation that I had earlier today with Steve. I just want to kind of present the summary information of that conversation, which was basically an expressed urgency around a adjustment to the worked hours written into that position. Is really, I guess it ultimately led to framing it in terms more reasonably and really in better faith around the terms of the position rather than the terms of Jen's specific, situation now, because this is really a change that would was requested to be proposed as a permanent shift. The property manager position has been a part-time position and has been scheduled at a regular 20 hours a week. I think it was hired in that way originally several times. And the proposed request is to increase the number of hours built into the property manager position from 20 hours standard up to, I believe we said 25 to 31 as the range, as a range of hours. Steve, I hope that is accurate from what we talked about.
Yes.
31 being the maximum threshold of a part-time position. At 32 hours, it becomes a full-time position under our personnel policy. And that is a conversation that I think is also something that is part of maybe the property management report or other conversations that are maybe a more long-term planning process. But at this moment, there is some need behind increasing the number of hours for this position. It is in line with everything, I guess I will say, that I know as someone who works a day job very similar to what Jen does, and knows that what she does in her position is far beyond what I think is usual and customary for someone scheduled for 20 hours a week. And what this means, I tried to crunch some numbers for us. What this means is to increase the expenditure annually by about $10,000, $10,868. So this is a pretty significant bump. However, that is out of a budget of right now a total personnel budget line item of $76,367 and about a 14% total increase in our personnel expenditures. That feels very justified based on how much work is expected in managing the kind of assets and properties that we have taken on. To me, honestly, it feels like something that could have been justified a really long time ago. And we are blessed to have someone willing to be open to that. But it is also something that our current property manager is very interested in as an immediate shift. So that was the proposal. One other point budget-wise is that there are 3.5 months left in our fiscal year, which means that of the increase expenditure, we're looking only at like a less than 1/3 of that amount remaining in our current budget. And we are beginning the budget review process as we speak. And we are kind of in the perfect time frame within which to be able to maneuver our budget with knowledge of this change, with foresight and planning around this change, to build it into next year's budget. And considering that we're looking at more like about 3 of the 10,000 actually impacting us before we have next year's budget to approve. So questions and discussion. And also, actually, first, maybe I'll ask Steve if you want to add some comments to all of that. I don't know if I captured everything.
No, thank you. I thought you did a great job. I think it's important to frame this in terms of the actual position, not so much in terms of who's in the position right now. We are exceptionally fortunate to have Jen in the position. That just happens to coincide with this kind of movement at this time. It just brings this position more in line. It would make it a more attractive position moving forward, and it provides some stability. And hopefully we were able to retain Jen for a long time. I think it's been a really, really solid and sound relationship for the VNA and for the people we serve. So I'm looking forward to this.
I think another thing I want to add in terms of the perspective from a property manager is that as someone managing the properties that we have to maintain, we are asking a lot just with the current scheduling of maintaining and basically keeping the fires lit on our buildings and keeping the roofs, you know, from leaking and basically managing day-to-day operations. Beyond that, there is a huge amount of work that goes into soliciting and filling vacancies, which is another thing that is a big ask of someone in a part-time position as well. And given the fact that we are headed into a very unpredictable season with a very unpredictable forecast for what to expect in terms of our vacancies over the next year. If we really want to look at the big picture, investing more hours to give bandwidth to our property manager to direct towards trying to maximize our filling our vacancies is also, I would say, a worthwhile investment in a timely way right now. So
my main question is, why not just go to 40 hours? Is it just a financial thing, or, I mean, I think the work is there for 40 hours a week.
That's, I think, a bigger conversation. I think we've looked at this as this is what we need at this time, and because it works with Jen in this framework, that's the way why we've kind of advanced this proposal. You know, that's probably a conversation to be had down the line. But at this time, because it worked for Jen like this, I know there's a certain level where it becomes problematic or disadvantageous for her to make above a certain amount.
And if I could speak to that question, I personally would support a motion like that in my heart of hearts, but I also know that I nor anyone else in our organization is an HR manager or expert. And there are different considerations in employing full-time employees according to labor practices and legality. And I feel like it would be in due diligence to at least consult some legal advice before adding another full-time employee to make sure that we design a position that is in line with labor standards. And unless we want to create the mirror image position of Steve's, which I don't know that that's appropriate to do when the positions are so different in nature. I guess my hesitation is that seems like a very good prospect, but it seems like a subsequent move. And this is just the reason that this came tonight is just basically time constraints and not wanting to push it to even next month, wanting to be able to enact this effective immediately. And it's such a significant shift that it felt worthwhile to escalate it, basically. And I could be wrong. It could be a clear green light, but I feel reluctance to make a decision like that without a little bit of legal oversight for the ways that it might affect our organization or the employees.
Brendan, this certainly gives us the advantage of some time. So if that's the discussion we want to have, we've now, you know, if the motion were to pass, we've got this at least to act as a stopgap measure until that's the next step. I don't think anyone's opposed to it on their face. I think it's just wasn't appropriate at this moment.
Any other questions or discussion, or anyone who would like to make a motion in relation to the proposal to increase the hours scheduled for the property manager position permanently. Or I guess when I say permanently, you know, I guess I mean more effectively from now until any potential future change, to 25 to 31 hours.
I'll make a motion to adopt the proposed changes for our property manager's time increase, and at the same time, add in the caveat that we look going forward at adopting this into a full-time position.
Second.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna request a roll call on this one as well.
Aaron Bensinger,
I'm gonna abstain on this one.
Eddie DeGraw, affirmative with a thumbs up. Brendan Maloney, affirmative with a thumbs up. Sarah Ruggles,
Yes.
Margaret Wilson, I will vote in favor of this. Laura Satino,
Yes.
Jeremy Turpening,
Yes.
Aaron Harris.
Yes.
So that is passed with one abstention.
Thank you, everybody. That brings us to our original 5C, an approval of the project to replace a major replacement of HVAC at 913 South Westnedge. Currently having a ancient beast of a furnace shared among tenants, creating a lot of repair bills and a lot of tension in trying to figure out best ways to divvy that up over the years in terms of recovery of the cost. We had informed the tenants, I believe, at least going on about a year ago, that this was a contingency of leases that have been signed in our recent history, saying that that project was to be scheduled in the very near future. And we are kind of running into the point where it is upon us to uphold our end of the obligation. The furnace kind of got postponed for a while as we, in the summer last year and fall, had been discussing the possible sale of that property. And given that we are well into winter right now, and those conversations have stalled out a little bit, we are looking at getting this completed for the sake of upholding our lease obligations to our tenants. There were 3 bids for the HVAC portion of things, as well as a bid for the electric portion of things. So actually, I want to break it down into 2 projects because we are looking at 2 contractors and 2 checks to sign. The electric portion of things is really an expense that is required no matter what. Electric has to be redone, and the Yes Electric quote was the recommended quote at a total of $72.75. The HVAC and the furnaces themselves and installation and required modifications along with that are under the 3 quotes that were provided were at $27,400, $20,862, and $20,000. However, I should note that $20,000 bid from Bartholomew has since been declined, or at least temporarily. They are not currently able to schedule that work for us. So the recommendation from our property manager was to approve the Adams quote, which was the one that was $20,862. And that would be in conjunction with the Yes Electric quote of $72.75. Those are the recommendations of our staff, and those are the prospective motions that we would have if there are, unless there are any questions or discussion on the project.
I would like to add a couple more things. So we do have a tenant with some health issues that they cannot control their own, because it's all one system. There are some smoking issues in the building, and so we're out of fair housing guidelines where that tenant cannot control their own HVAC. So with these health issues that they're having, we cannot assist them to mediate. Yeah, so basically someone smoking and this tenant who has health issues around smoking cannot change the conditions at all. So that's a fair housing issue that we're underneath this. And then another thing is, this is something that we budgeted for. So it's not necessarily something out of our budget, it is in our budget. And if you guys look at our budget, some money was actually the line item that this was budgeted for. Some of the work that has been done on the building was pulled out of that budget. So it's in between, so it looks less than the amount that we have. But based off of our maintenance budget and our budgeted money, it equals the amount that we need. So just in case anyone sees that.
Yeah, I do remember, thank you. Those are important notes. And I do remember as part of our last budget review, that this project was one of the biggest considerations in finalizing our capital improvements budget from last year. And we had considered that would be the kind of biggest question mark, whether we would be actually paying that out over the next year, but it is and has been in there. Any other questions or discussion or a motion on these?
Can you clarify the 7275? Can you say that differently, or how? Sorry, I'm trying to take notes, and is that?
Thank you. So this is pretty common that when you have a major project that requires not just a one-for-one replacement, that it'll have, you'll have to hire a separate contractor to replumb or to rewire. And in this case, the electrician will need to basically rewire to allow for separate units of all the HVAC instead of one main unit. And the Yes Electric is the name of the contractor. So that would be Adams Heating and Cooling for the for the amount of $20,862, and the Yes Electric doing the electric work that is required for that HVAC project in the amount of $7,275. Sorry,
I kept
Eddie.
thinking it was $72.75 because you kept saying it's $72.75. So I was like, that doesn't sound right. So just clarifying.
You wouldn't be asking y'all about that, was. But thank you though. Yeah. Okay.
So I'd like to make the motion
So
that we
that's a total.
accept. Oh. Go ahead, Sarah. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bid by Adams for the amount of $20,875 and accept Yes Electrical. Oh, yeah. Yes Electrical in the amount of $7,525. for the installation and completion of
To
4
clarify,
individual. Oh, yep.
sorry, just once again, those amounts are $20,862
Oh, 862.
and $7,275.
I got those wrong. 7,200. Okay. And 75, and then 20,862 for Adams for the installation of 4 individual HVAC units to be installed at 913 Osborne. Or 913 South Westnedge.
We got it.
That's my address.
Thank you. Is there a second? I think there might have been a second, but the audio might have cut out. Did somebody just second that? I think that Zoom might be just muting y'all recklessly since I changed the settings. So sorry, it seems a little wonky tonight.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay. This is a pretty big dollar amount item. So we will go ahead and do one more roll call for that. If that's all right. But we are getting a lot done tonight, and I appreciate everybody
in the affirmative.
sticking with it.
Eddie DeGraw. Brandon, affirmative. Brandon Maloney, affirmative. Sarah Ruggles. Affirmative. Margaret Wilson, affirmative. Laura Satino.
Yes.
Jeremy Turpening.
Yes.
Aaron Harris.
Yes.
That sounded like a unanimous consent.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. We have one more action item for tonight, or possible action item for tonight, which is the commercial rental policy. This is a returning beast that has plagued us for several years. And to give the brief narrative of the history of this policy, I want to say 2018. Jared actually drafted a, I think it was maybe a page and a half draft of a proposed RFP policy, as it was called. And it was kind of a little more all-encompassing of different proposal processes, which probably could have been applied to things like art projects. But at the time was, again, arose out of the need for a solicitation process to fill commercial vacancies. That draft kind of lost traction and was never ultimately passed. I don't think I can conjure the details of that, but the issue of how our staff is expected to and desired to go about the process of soliciting and filling commercial vacancies has been a constant frustration for our staff, and issue that returns again and again to the board every time this comes up. It's coming up again right now. And once again, we do not have a policy in place. This is something that has been asked of us for multiple years, very explicitly, and in absence of that, has just been going through the same motions of a policy or a de facto process that prompted the need for a policy in the first place. The end of the board packet, that policy is in there. It's a 2-page policy, and it is a policy specific to commercial rentals, not an RFP policy in general. This is only to be used for our rental spaces. But it is the culmination of kind of what I did to take chunks of Jared's draft and insert them into a new document that Jen and I and Steve committed a pretty extensive work session to enhancing and fleshing out, and tried to make it a lot more comprehensive, but also pretty concise. So we're looking at a 2-page policy that lays out every step of the process, determining rents, solicitation, collecting submissions, submission requirements, reviewing submissions, selecting and confirming the selection of a tenant. All of that was laid out there. I know that this board pack came to you recently, but this document has been circulating for quite a while and was originally sent out to the board maybe mid last year. Also didn't really meet with approval, kind of met with that conundrum of needing to like review all of our policies and scrutinize everything. And I definitely think that there is improvement to be made in this policy. And the reason that I'm putting it out for a potential action to put it into place tonight is because this is what we've got. It's not the best we could get, but for now it is better than I'll wager to say it is better than an absence of a policy and an ad hoc process on a case-by-case basis, and gives us something to improve on. Tried to emphasize in the past, I don't think that we need to look at any of our policies and procedures as anything documented. If we're all showing up and doing the work, then those can be changed and improved and modified at any time. Are there questions about the specific policy itself or any of the wording or anything like that?
I agree with all the points you made, that the policy has been around through at least a couple of vettings. It's what we have, and it gives us something to start from if we want to make it better as we go forward. That's us. So I think having something's better than not having anything, and it gives our staff some guidance. And if nothing else, it makes sure that what we're doing is explicit, which is always important. So I would be happy to motion that we adopt this policy.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
I abstain.
All opposed? I hear the ayes have it. I hear no opposition.
Actually, I'm gonna abstain because
Okay.
I was a rental. I mean, I rented before. I feel a little weird about it. So
Okay. So passed with one abstention.
I also abstained since I basically drafted most of the policy.
So passed with 2 abstentions.
Oh, thank
And it
you.
appears we have 2 hard outs at 7:30 and we'll soon lose quorum. So we should round it up.
We actually will not lose quorum if 2 folks leave, because quorum is 5 now and we have 8 present. So that's kind of a blessing, but I don't think we have a ton of ground left to cover. Sorry, we ended up skipping the check-in. If folks want to try for a checkout at the end, I'm definitely open to that. I just want to take a few minutes now for a report from Steve, since you've been so quiet over there all night. Definitely a lot has happened, and it's always good to just touch base with the people who are there representing our organization every day. And
well, thank you. This has been a fantastic meeting. I've really enjoyed the process. I've enjoyed watching or listening to the participation and just feel really encouraged by the amount of actual work that got done this evening. There's a lot of exciting things to go back to report to Jen about, and there's also exciting things that I think will improve the foundation of the association. And I'm excited about the conversations with Damara. I think there's still, I think everybody in the association still has the willingness to engage and to roll up their sleeves and to do the work. And that hasn't been the reason why we haven't had a lot of traction. But I think that, in this year, almost everyone that I've spoken to individually has felt like they could plug in and they want to, this might be a place where they would get some, they could feel like a good use of their energy. So tonight's meeting, I think, was really a fantastic encapsulation of all of that, and to see so many action items get covered and to bring Damara on board is really encouraging. We're settling into the office up there. I was talking to Sarah today, and the Pepsi machine that has been in that office for 8 years was removed last week. And of course, on the removal, it broke the front door, and that kind of stuff doesn't happen when it's in July and nice out. It only happens when it's 7 degrees out. So, these are still kind of some of the stumbling blocks that we're having as we get into the office. And we see Gwendolyn quite a bit, and we are able to have some good brainstorming sessions. There is a good potential that we'll be able to have some sort of open house fairly soon. I was just talking to her manager, or the Hope Through Navigation manager, Miss E, and we've been talking about things we might do that would let people know that we're ready and willing to serve. So we're in line for our taxes this year. I've got some March deadlines that I need to make sure that the 990s are filed on time, but I'm encouraged again that we're going in the right direction there. So far, I think we're doing as well as we can. We had our first community affairs meeting.
I never asked that when he gives his report, but.
What's that?
Oh, I just wondered if anybody has any questions for you. I don't usually ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like maybe a valid thing to wonder.
Steve, can we set up the voicemail for our new location? I know the robot sounds cool and all, but I've had people go, why can't I leave a message? And I said, because Steve doesn't like to talk.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Did the door get repaired?
It is on its way to being repaired. It has been duct taped and cardboarded over. Jen took care of it almost immediately, made the calls to J and J Glass, and Pepsi will reimburse us for it.
Oh, they broke the door. Okay.
Yeah, they broke the door. No, I'm sorry. That was just sort of the nonprofit luck, I guess, if you will. They've been in there forever.
Mercury's in retrograde. Put that in the notes.
I think that might be in my report somewhere.
Well, I think I'm going to leave the committee assignments largely to what you should see there in the agenda as far as the roundup. I want to just bring attention to the fact that our nominating committee is currently, I have not, after trying to speak directly with most of y'all, there's still a few folks I need to connect with, but the nominating committee is definitely something we could use an immediate engagement with from 1 or 2 folks, and technically is the only committee that is dictated in our bylaws as one that we have to have. So I really encourage everybody to consider engaging with that committee. I think that our conversation with Damara tonight made me feel especially emphatic about trying to activate that committee. In absence of that, I guess I accept like the default interim nominating committee appointment, but please reach out if that is something that you feel like you have any bandwidth for. Or if you know anybody who's not on our board who wants, who you want to refer as the ultimate networker, who you think might be able to put a little time into that in the near future. That's something very timely that is going to be necessary, like basically just for the next month or so, because our nominations process is closing early this year. So between now and our next meeting is actually when we need to activate that a little bit. Other than that, I don't know if there are any, if there's anything that y'all who have already kind of voiced your engagement with different committees would like to bring to attention. But I did want to, maybe these are action items. I'm not actually sure if it requires a vote, but it does say that that committee chairs are appointed by the board. I don't think it's necessarily the most timely requirement, but we do have a couple of folks who have expressed a willingness to engage in leadership roles, with Laura being generous in heading up our fundraising efforts for the remainder of this term, and Jeremy being willing to relieve Maggie of the overload of so much of your duties that you are so rigorous with all the time in heading up the housing committee with some exciting projects that we talked about. So if y'all want to vote on those appointments, we can. I don't necessarily think it's necessary or perhaps even equitable for this small group of folks to think that we have the really, I don't know. I feel like these are volunteer efforts, and these are folks with exciting or with energy for these committees, and we're grateful to have you all. Brendan?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick update on the property management committee.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'd love, if anyone wants to join, it's great having Steve and Jen involved. Hopefully we're doing a lot of work and a lot of good work. And one of those things being, Jen is really looking at the policies we need from a fair housing and equity standpoint, because she's done a lot of training on that. And so in the next subsequent board meetings, we're going to be presenting a policy each meeting to then be voted on the next meeting. So I have already an email filled out to send to you guys and the rest of the board for policies to be reviewed before the next meeting, and then we'll send them out again just so that everyone knows what's there. And then at the same time, Jen's doing a really good job on her property management update. So take a look at that. If there's anything else you need to add or would like her to add, come to the property management committee and we can talk about it and add it. It's really an exciting thing to be a part. So yeah, I'll send that email along.
Thank you, Brendan. And one more quick thing to add too, is that we had talked about for next month. We're going to be coming at y'all with a proposal for a projected rent policy, a rent setting policy for our residential units over the upcoming year. And it's sounding more and more like a possible rent freeze is going to be a recommendation. I can't say that for sure. I think there are more conversations to be had between now and then, but we're going to be coming to that conversation next month. So be ready with your ideas about that. And yeah, we'll have a full schedule again for next month. I think maybe we can try to follow up on this with some more productive developments. This did feel really productive. It feels really good to have made some progress this year already. And I don't know, 2021 hasn't really been maybe what we were all hoping for after 2020, but I do feel encouraged And I feel grateful that y'all are here tonight and showing up and still have like any volunteer energy left at this point in the midwinter, in a blizzard, after 2020, in a pandemic. So appreciated. It keeps me going to see that y'all are showing up for it, you know? So thanks. And I guess I want to close on, I think what to me was the standout of tonight, the aha moment of tonight, which was Damara's suggestion to ask people, don't assume why they're not showing up. Talk to past board members about why they stopped showing up. Those considerations felt very impactful to me. And maybe that's kind of my checkout for tonight. If anybody wants to share a checkout, I think we could take a minute or two, or we can go ahead and recess if y'all are ready to say goodnight.
I actually have to get going, guys, but
yeah,
it's
sorry,
nice seeing everyone's faces.
It is great to see everybody. We found out our dog has diabetes and she has to get her shot at the exact same time every day, and it's really so.
I had a diabetic cat for 8 years, so I feel you on that. It
so sucks. She hates it. She tries to bite me every time, so I gotta go do that. So sorry, everyone.
It gets easier.
Hey, Eddie, how's your knee doing?
No, I can walk ish. I'm not supposed to be walking on uneven ground, which is like all the ground right now. So, but I got these nice yak tracks at the thrift store for $5, so I'm pretty psyched. They're the things that go on your boot with like little wiry things. They're very expensive normally, so I'm very proud of finding them for cheap.
I saw your picture of did you go to the lake, right?
Yeah, we went to South Haven.
I was blown away by that. Like, I was like,
it was very cold.
My God. I felt like a mama bird, just like, oh my God, you're gonna fall. It's so
I shuffled along and I had my little yak tracks on and I have like a really fancy knee brace. So.
Yeah. It's impressive. That's a rock star moment.
But I mean, that's like all I can do. I normally go cross country skiing. I can't go sledding. I'm walking. I can walk. That was my level. I could walk to the end of the and look at the
what it's worth. It's really, really cold
lighthouse
right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
it's only been 3 months.
Yeah, I had that same surgery like 13 years ago-ish, something like that. And yeah, it takes like a year before you're really 100% again. And you got
that's what everyone says.
Because so a few months from now, you're gonna feel like great, but that's actually your most dangerous point because that tissue revascularizes really slowly, and
it takes forever for it to heal properly. So,
but hey, I'm good and I'm fat, so if I can be fat and do it, you'll be fine.
I had the other knee done when I was 19. I have a matching set now.
Oh yeah, I like it. I don't want to do that. It was enough the first time. Well, I'm going to start calling you Bionic Eddie from now on.
I guess we're all bionic, aren't we?
I like that.
Wow.
And Erin, I wanted to really nice to see you today because I know you've just been having a heck of a winter so far. 2021's been like a whirlwind in your world. Are you doing okay?
I'm okay-ish. I'm gonna be really okay because I've scheduled a trip out of the country next week for about 3 weeks. So
whoa.
I'm calling it my respite trip. My best friend's making me do it. My family was just like, go. My kids, my ex-husband was like, go. But it seems like I can't avoid every day something making me, what else is going to happen today? What's going on? I'm dealing with my kids' school right now seems to be a full-time job. and what's happening there. And so I'm doing okay. I'm just really excited to go, and I have to quarantine for 10 days with a tether. I have to take several COVID tests, and I'm excited to quarantine for 10 days with one of my favorite people on earth. So
Wait, where are you going? Can I ask where you're going?
I'm going to Abu Dhabi.
What? That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be
Wow.
so nice.
This will be, yeah, this will be my third. She lived in Dubai, so I've been there twice. The first time Jen took me for my 40th birthday. That was her present to me. And so I've taken my kids, and now she moved from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, which is, for me, is exciting because I can see a little bit of a different culture there. It's not the big city that's, you know, you see it, then you see it all in an hour, and you're like, I get it. Everything's the biggest and best. Okay, it gets old. I'm excited to go to like the Grand Mosque, hopefully, and some other things. Yeah, cool. So I if there's anyone that can like make me laugh hard in this world, it's her. So I'm just gonna go let her take care of me for 18 days.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm really excited about that, though. If the constant things around me would stop so I can just go and enjoy it, that would be really great too. But you know,
Erin, I'm happy to see you tonight. Like,
thank you.
I've just been thinking about you a lot, and it's inspiring to see you kind of getting back into the swing of things. And
yeah, I like to call it I always say I go there to just like regroup and level up. So I just want to go and just refigure myself out again, and you know, just try to breathe for a few weeks, you know. So
Hey, Erin.
Yeah.
I was once given a bit of wisdom by a carnival barker, and he informed me that if the ride slows down, it's less fun. So you got to stay at full speed to have all the fun.
It's true. It's true.
There you go. There you go.
I've been tested hard over the past couple of months, and I feel like I'm stronger because of it. So
Carney wisdom would tell you you're on your way.
I've been challenged in ways I never thought possible, and yeah, I have more nurse in me than I even imagined. I've always said over, you know, always, my kids, even if they get hurt, they're like, don't look. I don't like anything to do with anything medical. So, you know, caring for my mom I was like, I can't do that. And then I just decided I can, and I just did it. And so that was really empowering, and it was, you know, I'm grateful for that. Yeah, so, and the situation with my kids' school is bringing out a lot I've learned here. So that's really helpful to fight that fight and stand my ground and not back down. So
yeah, good job.
Thank you. It's been a really intense few months, but hopefully when I come back, the snow is gone. The last time I went was when we had the big flood. Not to jinx that on you.
How was this? Oh no.
So yeah, we watched that from afar, and came back after when I had my kids in Dubai. So yeah, came back and it was over by the time we got back.
Well,
so, yeah.
I've never been the giver of 24/7 care, but I have been the recipient, and I have nothing but the greatest respect for folks who do that at any point in their lives, because it is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And I felt almost like it was harder than my recovery, that what they did to give care.
I don't know how hospice
family members, who do it most of the time, and to do that is just incredible. And wow, that
we were just adamant that she didn't go into a facility, and that we were there with her and we got to do it. So it was, and we were, you know, it was very fast. So we were just grateful that she didn't suffer for too long. So yeah, it definitely opened your mind to a whole new a whole, it's pretty expansive when it comes to all the things you don't think you're capable of. It's, yeah. Yep.
Well,
It was, yeah.
proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And we missed you. And
I'll be back by the next board meeting. I checked the calendar.
So it's been a really long time. Yeah. So it's really
I actually was on the phone with Jen when I was planning the trip, and I said, when I don't even remember when board meetings are. And she's like, well, you know that this day. So I'm like, I'll never remember that. And then we've looked at the calendar. I'm like, okay, I won't miss a board meeting if I go this day. These are the, so I was
not plan your trip to Abu Dhabi.
Was it really? It was part
Did you?
of
No, you didn't.
No. I planned it around my no kid time. That's what I planned. That was the primary. That was the primary plan. Yes. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Treat yourself.
Yes.
All you can.
I'm actually most looking forward to the quarantine part. Like not like just being with her, and she has a pool and it's 75 and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Gosh, yeah, right? Quarantining
Yeah.
by myself, that's what it would be like. I know that there are like two ends of the spectrum right now. There are people who find the loneliness of COVID life heavy. And then there are parents who never get to be alone. And someone is always touching you.
Yeah.
And they both love what the other one has.
I mean, my kids are with me half the time, and when they're gone and they come back, I'm always like, hi, sit with me. And they're teenagers and they're like, no. And I'm like, no, I don't even get to be around anyone else.
Anybody else, get over here.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm gonna go make my kids dinner.
Yeah.
Well,
dinner
right.
as well.
I'm glad you're all here.
I love this little social hour after our meeting. Time.
Yes. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Night. Night, everybody.
Jeremy,
I miss you. He's even there. He doesn't miss me back.
I am.
Bye, Steve.
I heard you. Bye. I had to find the unmute button.
Oh.
I miss all of you too.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye,
See you guys
everyone.
later.
See you guys.
Bye.